So doing something today that should be completely familiar to you, Pythagoras equation, but we need to go through it first of all just to reinforce some of our algebra, but secondly make sure you're absolutely completely au fait with this, forwards, backwards, sideways and so on. So of course the Pythagoras equation applies to right angled triangles. There's a pretty little right angled triangle. There is the right angle, 90 degrees, which we will mark from henceforth with that little sort of boxy bit that you've seen before. The most important side of a right angled triangle is the one opposite this right angle, otherwise known as the hypotenuse. This is always the longest side of a right angled triangle. And of course, Pythagoras said the square on the side of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. Or in other words, if I start labeling them A, B, C, and here you can see my little notation of the right angle. C is the hypotenuse, so C squared is equal to A squared plus B squared. The sum of the squares of the other two sides for A and B, square them, A squared plus B squared, and the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum, so C squared is A squared plus B squared. I might try to entertain you at some point with a little ditty about that particular way of expressing the Pythagoras equation. So what should we do with it? Some examples. So a right angled triangle has two non-hypotenuse sides, 6.2 and 10.5 centimeters. Calculate the length of the hypotenuse. So there we are, C squared is A squared plus B squared. I've just told you that A and B are 6.2 and 10.5. Pop those into the equation. C squared is 6.2 squared plus 10.5 squared. C squared is 148.69. Be sure you're getting this on your calculator. Square root it, give it to 3 sig figs, even though I should really just give it to 2 sig figs, and we get 12.2 centimeters. How about this one? The hypotenuse. I'm telling the hypotenuse here, 6.1. Second side, 4.8. Calculate the length of the third side. Well, we know it's got to be less than 6.1 because the hypotenuse is always the longest one. Let's pop in the values given. Hypotenuse 6.1. One side, 4.8. So pop all that in. We get 6.1 squared for the hypotenuse is 4.8 squared for the other side, plus b squared, the one we don't know. So b squared is 6.1 squared minus 4.8 squared. B squared is 14.17. B is 3.76 centimeters. Quiz associated with just practicing those types of calculations.